The National Drug Law Enforcement Agency (NDLEA) has been asked to adopt practical measures as the USA, Europe, and Brazil, among others, in order not to delay ships and accrue when drugs are found on board the vessel. The Director of Operations, Pacific Basin Shipping Limited, Hong Kong, Mr. Suraj Prabhakar, made this statement during a conference which was organized by the Maritime Security Providers Association of Nigeria (MASPAN), alumni of the Maritime Academy of Nigeria around AMANO 2024, with the theme Drug and Human Smuggling and Trafficking: The Evolving Maritime Security Threats to Ships and Seafarers.
Earlier, during the period of COVID, drug smuggling on board ships has gone up by some 400% globally. And most of the drug smuggling activities on ships starts in ports in Brazil, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Mexico, and Panama. Santos in Brazil for the last 4 years has been the worst port in the world for drug smuggling on board ships. Drug cartels seem to easily penetrate the port security services, board the ships, hide drugs on board ships, which is extremely easy to do on big ships. The crew have no clue that the drugs on board. The preferred destination ports are in Western Europe, United States, and Australia. On occasions, they use intermediate ports in Africa like Nigeria. From there on, it's transshipped to the preferred destinations. Smuggling activities are carried out by large cartels. A cartel called the PCC in Sao Paulo, Brazil, which started about 20 odd years ago, has got 40,000 active members globally, including perhaps in Lagos. And they've got 60,000 extra contract workers working for them. They have deep pockets, they're extremely well organized, the intelligence networks are incredible. They know the ship's design and configuration as well as the ship's crew, because they have the intelligence networks to do this. In certain countries, when drugs are discovered on board at destination ports, crew are imprisoned in jail, they live under harsh conditions, ships are detained, and the families and the crew members have to go through severe physical and mental trauma. In almost every case in such countries, after multiple court hearings, which could last months and years, the crews are finally released and proven innocent. Very seldom do they get, criminalized, saying they were guilty. And in that period, sadly, most of their families have suffered for years on end. And this actually destroys careers, destroys family life, destroys them financially, emotionally, and some extreme measures, really.
In his address, the Minister of Marine and Blue Economy, Boyega Oyetola, who also doubles as the chairman of the event, spoke on the troubling increase in maritime threats, particularly those related to drug and human trafficking. Oyetola, who was represented by the Director of Marine Environment Management, Nigeria Maritime Administration and Safety Agency (NIMASA), Mr. Heki Dimowo, said, and I quote, "These activities are not merely criminal acts. They erode our social fabric, destabilize communities, and challenge our law enforcement at sea. Moreover, they pose significant risks to the marine and security of seafarers and vessels. We must confront the fact that our waters are increasingly viewed as transit routes to illicit activities," he said.
I mean, for every vessel that is operating out there, and from a country that is a party to SOLAS convention, you are also compelled to carry out your security actions, respect to the standards in the ISP scope. And there is the need for every vessel that is in compliance with SOLAS to have an approved ship security plan. That approved ship security plan deals with all these procedures that we're asking, comparing the maritime to the airline industry. How to deal with access control, how to deal with communication of information. And we are within an international sphere of business. We also have to key that into the way we are enforcing our laws. And I believe this sets one framework for how we should collaborate. Information, education to those who are enforcing our laws. So you find, for example, a requirement in the ship security plan that you have to determine the procedure for communication of information if drugs are found on board. That ship security plan will be approved by that administration. The crew have a responsibility to abide by that plan. If they are arrested for actions that are not within that approved security plan, it sends the wrong information to the maritime industry. And it will cause the shipping companies to avoid our environment the way that Suresh has talked about. What's the end result? The end result is that freight for shipping to Nigeria, because of the connected cost, will go up and will be the one suffering for it. So the platform for that collaboration, from my own standpoint, is that the people that are enforcing our laws have to be educated on the ICS code, first of all.
President of MASPAN, AMANO, Emmanuel Megua, said that the group expressed strong support for the fight against all forms of trafficking and smuggling, including drugs and humans, adding that they are mainly focused on addressing responses to these crimes as they occur within the maritime sector. Megoa said, and I quote, "We aim to ensure that perpetrators of these crimes are apprehended and fully punished of the law without subjecting the innocent to unnecessary difficulties that are counterproductive to the growth of shipping."
the the jurisdiction of the state. As you know, UNCLOS has made it clear that piracy issues and other crimes outside the 12 nautical miles is where we have a gap, a huge gap. When things happen within the 12 nautical miles, so far it is being handled under our local laws, and the NDLEA Act is sufficient to deal with that. And that is why the NDLEA will take priority when it comes to these issues. Of course, if there is need, if the industry feel that there is need to take those specific crimes within the maritime domain, even in the 12 nautical miles, and develop an SOP on how they should be handled and put them under Admiralty, as the legal representative and the panel seats discuss, then it can be looked into by the industry.
Unless the NDA understand the process, they will continue to work hard and hard and hard and will not get results. As a ship captain, I will not report to local authorities anything I find on my vessel first. There is a standard SOP, operating procedure, that govern what I do on the vessel. And as you have rightly said, the first point of contact is the designated person ashore. Now, if there are other issues, let us also remember that the vessel is flying under the laws of a different country. And while that vessel is outside his own country in another jurisdiction, the industry plays that responsibility to ensure that the ship is protected by those laws on the Maritime Administration through, I think, some of them, the port state control measures, that is the Abuja MOU in some cases. So So unless there is a collaboration between NDAA, the Maritime Administration, to come up with a standard operating procedure for reporting, which the industry will accept, it will not encourage the ship captain to just risk and just report outside what you already have. But if we come to understand how things operate, we can now find a working solution that will say, okay, this is how reporting can be achieved. Because the way it is now, NDLA will not be satisfied with everyone getting the information and while they are the last to get it, because at that time, vital information may have been lost.
During the panelist interaction, experts spoke on how federal government should review the enabling laws so as to avoid foreign investors boycotting Nigerian domain.
Elucidate the implication of not getting involved in taking the right actions and the steps towards managing this situation. And then, so when it comes to Nigeria, we ask ourselves, what are we going to be doing to make sure that we reduce the impact of this drug trafficking business? Take for example, if you go to some countries, because of for us here it's life imprisonment, but in some countries like Singapore and China, it's actually death. So you see that these activities have reduced because of the laws that are put in place. So what we have done is for our members to understand what these guidelines are for and why it's important for them to have the publication. Because the publication is actually revised in view of the current realities of the business.
It is quite timely. I want to say a very big thank you to the organizers of the event, AMANO and MASPAN, for thinking about this event. It's a topic that should be, discussed quite often because of the value or the volume of the trade of trafficking of drugs globally, which Nigeria also is, unfortunately, also is known to be a partaker, not by our own making, but because it seems that Africa is more like a...
Now, what is the way forward? I was so moved by the presentation of Captain about the captain that was jailed for 2 years. Then the one that Alaji Adawo talked about, of the person that they put gun on the head and the syndicate gave him drugs. In such cases, you can share intelligence. I'm sure we have a CSO on board of each vessel, or even with the captain, and thank God for this kind of a forum. You have connections with NDLA already. Once we get the intelligence, the person will be covered. No matter what it is, even if the drug gets to Nigeria, we know how to go about the investigation.
Crime. And that migration is a right of every human being. Right from the creation of the world, human beings have been moving from hamlets to villages to towns to cities of the world. It is when migrants go through irregular routes that is when it becomes a problem. During the course of going through irregular routes, migration becomes irregular. Let me state that there is nothing that is called illegal migration. All migrations are legal, but we have irregular migration.
The first thing I think would be, a pathway towards expedient judgment would be granting accelerated or expedited hearing towards detained crewmen or vessels. We know that 90% of world trade is via the shipping industry, and so there is significant connection between judicial process and economic progress. And so to this effect, if we regard the arrest of crewmen, seafarers, right, with the same urgency and importance with which we give maritime claims, that may be a way to expedite judgment. So a case can really and truly be made for cases of drug trafficking on a vessel that should be treated as maritime claims, right? And just delving slightly deeper into that, the Admiralty Jurisdiction Procedure Rules 2023 provides the creation of Admiralty Jurisdiction of the Federal High Court. Now, this means that there's specific judges to adjudicate over maritime cases, right? And so this means that if drug trafficking on a vessel is a criminal offense under the Admiralty Jurisdiction Act, it will be regarded as a maritime claim. Now, specialized courts as such can address that. So perhaps it's something we can look at, regulations to expedite the prosecution, the trial, and the judgment of seafarer,
which are duly declared, manifested in the bill of lading, and its freight duly paid. So that means anything outside that. If you look at the things we are dealing with now, drugs and human trafficking aspects, first, they are not declared. They are goods. And two, the freight or fare has not been paid on their heads. So we're dealing with criminality, the hurt the ship owners, and there's also the aspect of issue against the state. So for postal control, a vessel, there are a lot of things, factors that will aggravate into a vessel being classed as substandard. Primary will be first, the certificates are all valid, the crew are well certificated, and of course, the vessels, the construction aspect, the equipment aspect are all meet international standards. So let's take an example, like Captain Elawo said about his time with the Nigerian National Shipping Line. I was also there. A vessel gets to a port like Liverpool, the custom officers come on board, they spend the whole time. If the vessel is there for 1 week, they basically leave on board the vessel. They tear the vessel apart. Every aspect is being opened. Searching for drugs. And eventually when they're securing, putting back the panels, they don't put them back well. Because they're in order to go. And in fact, we always think they were part of the process of our ships being run down so fast. So that's somehow turns a safety, a vessel that was that met international standard to the substandard. Then you go down to the criminals. What do? They will come in, they could, like one of the pictures that was shown to us, events, they will use events to stack drugs. Pipelines, they bridge the pipelines, stack drugs. Pipelines that were meant to carry cargoes, for liquid cargoes, or they were meant for effluent, are now blocked. And so that naturally turns the vessel into an unseaworthy vessel. A step further, what are the gateways? The law enforcement agencies are key in the enforcement, in checking to be sure that these evil activities don't continue on board the vessels. Then the next level, the regulatory authorities, and of course the posted aspects. There's what we call dark fleet. Dark fleets are vessels that often don't have their registration right. Often that probably just get and stencil the flag with the vessels registered on the vessels, but they are not really. A flag state like Nigeria, first focus is on vessels registered in Nigeria. And the only right Nigerian government or Nigerian inspectors will have on a foreign vessel will have to visit the foreign vessel or to inspect them. It's either on criminality or on posted. Posted is your right to inspect any vessel that comes into your port. And by our agreement, you should inspect at least 15% of foreign vessels that come into your port. So if you go on board the vessel, the inspector actually inspects the vessel to be sure that she's built, the equipment are all working, and so they have access to different aspects of the vessel within the period that the vessel is calling at your port. So somehow, in the course of inspection, they could strike a gold mine as in uncovered drugs are hidden somewhere. Somehow in the course of the inspection, they could see things that are not supposed to be. Probably some sort of alteration. Because the brains behind drug trafficking, they are brains. They have their research decision that, okay, you've got this way, we have to go the other way. And so if an inspector notices something that is actually outside what is reported based on probably the plans of the vessel, can easily flag something. And when these guys actually know that port states usually visit their vessels, they are very careful. Such vessels are not like target, in their own businesses. So port state actually is that net that besides the safety aspect can actually help to help this kind of activities.
Azuna, and I served as the master of ceremony and the moderator of the panel session, one of the moderators actually. And the event is put together by the Maritime Security Providers Association of Nigeria, MASPAN, and the alumni of the Maritime Academy of Nigeria, AMANO. And it's targeted at putting an end to drug trafficking, drug and human smuggling and trafficking, reviewing the threats this poses to ships and to seafarers. And it was such a robust one, first beginning with the case study from Captain Suresh, who came in from Pacific and gave us first-hand accounts of what their company, they own bulk ships, have had to go through and how many seafarers had to suffer. The cost implication of this on the industry, on the man on the street. So everything that happens and threatens maritime trade ends up affecting the layman who is at home and doesn't know anything about it. And so this questioned, the entire event questioned the kind of infrastructure we have, the efficacy of the infrastructure, our infrastructure that tackles drug trafficking and human trafficking. So we had representatives of NDLEA, we had representatives of NAP-TIP, yes, they tackled the human trafficking angle and they all spoke to what they do. But the industry came to a consensus, which is that maritime trade borders the international industry, and it's run by conventions. And as a result of this, our own laws cannot operate without fathoming what the content of the conventions were signatories to, how it impacts us and how our laws can impact those. As such, the stakeholders have called for a more robust forum where every player, whether it's the Nigerian ports as the landlord or NIMASA as the maritime administration, or Abuja MOU as the port state control, or seafarers themselves, or ship owners, or the police, we want something like what we had for the Deep Blue project, which tackled maritime security in terms of piracy, to be replicated. We want a situation where the industry would begin to see more robust collaboration, such that when drugs are gotten or found on board ships, not all of them are actually victims. Not all seafarers are actually liable. They are not all the originating sources or the culprits. And so we must find a way of factoring this in, where even the time that is used to deliberate and prosecute and investigate these matters are shortened, such that it doesn't impact on trade.
MASPAN and AMANO expressed strong support for the fight against all forms of trafficking and smuggling, including drugs and humans. Roland A. Kaama, Seabed TV.